The message came on a Tuesday morning. It arrived through every communication channel at once. Radio waves, quantum links, even old satellite systems that nobody used anymore. The Galactic Council wanted humanity to know they were watching. Admiral Park stood in the command center of Earth's largest orbital station. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in 3 wars during his lifetime. He had seen terrible things, but he had never seen anything like the fleet that now waited at the edge of the solar system. 200 ships, each one bigger than anything humans had ever built. They hung in space like sleeping giants, their weapons powered down but ready, a show of force, a reminder. "Sir," said Lieutenant from her station, "the translation is complete." Nodded, put it on screen. The message appeared in glowing letters. It was long, it was detailed, and it was not a request. The Galactic Council had ruled this part of the galaxy for 12,000 years. 47 species lived under their protection. Now humanity had been discovered. Now humanity would join them. The terms were simple. First, humanity would surrender all military vessels. Every ship, every weapon, every defense satellite. All of it would be given to the Council for disposal. Second, humanity would accept population controls. No more than 2 billion humans on any single planet. This was for stability, the message explained. Too many people caused problems. Third, humanity would pay tribute. 20% of all mineral production, 30% of all energy output, every year, forever. Fourth, Council overseers would live on every human world. They would watch, they would report, they would make sure humans followed the rules. In exchange, humanity would receive protection from outside threats. Humanity would receive limited trade rights with other species. Humanity would receive the honor of serving the greater galactic community. Read the message 3 times, then he laughed. It was not a happy sound. "Get me Doctor," he said, "and call an emergency meeting of the Defense Council." Doctor arrived within the hour. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a quick mind. She had spent her entire career studying alien civilizations from the fragments of data humanity had collected. Now she finally had something real to examine. She read the Council's terms carefully. She asked for historical records from the Council's public archives. She cross-referenced everything with what humanity knew about the 47 member species. 3 hours later, she presented her findings. "They are not negotiating," said. "This is not a proposal, this is an order." "Can we fight them?" asked General. He was the head of Earth's military forces, a practical man who liked practical solutions. "No," replied. "Not directly. Their fleet could destroy every human ship in less than a day. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours." "Then we accept," said another council member. "We have no choice." "No," shook her head. "Look at the data. Species that accept these terms do not survive. Not really. They joined the Council 6,000 years ago. Their population has dropped by 60%. Their culture is nearly gone. They were a proud warrior race. Now they mine asteroids for the Council and have forgotten how to fight. They made beautiful music that moved people to tears. The Council banned it as destabilizing." The room was quiet. "They do not protect species," continued. "They consume them, slowly, over centuries. They take everything that makes a people unique and grind it down to nothing." Stared at the message still glowing on the screen. "What happens if we refuse?" "Unknown. In 12,000 years, no species has ever refused." "Why not?" Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Because they have forgotten that refusal is possible. The Council is old, ancient. They have done things the same way for so long that they cannot imagine any other way. They send the terms, species accept. That is how it has always been. And if we break that pattern, then we become something they have never seen before, something they have no protocol for handling, something dangerous." Thought about his children. He thought about the billions of humans on Earth and the colonies. He thought about what their lives would look like under council rule. Controlled, limited, slowly fatting. Then he thought about what humans had always done when faced with impossible odds. They fought. Sometimes they lost, but they never surrendered without trying. "Draft a response," he said finally. "One word." Raised an eyebrow. "One word, Admiral." One word. He turned to face the screen, his reflection ghostly against the stars. "No." The response went out an hour later. It traveled across every frequency, just as the Council's message had. A single word, broadcast to 200 ships and 47 species and 12,000 years of unchallenged authority. "No." On the Council station, far across the galaxy, alarms began to sound. Officials scrambled to verify the transmission. Surely there was an error. Surely the translation was wrong. Surely the young species called humanity understood what they were being offered. But the message was clear. The translation was correct, and humanity understood perfectly. They simply did not care. High Arbiter of the hegemony stared at the single word on his screen. His tentacles coiled and uncoiled in confusion. In his 300 years of service, he had never seen such a thing. "What do we do?" asked his assistant. Did not answer. For the first time in his long life, he did not know. On Earth, Park watched the sun rise over the Pacific Ocean. Behind him, the command center buzzed with activity. Plans were being made. Ships were being prepared. A war nobody wanted was coming. But for now, in this quiet moment, the old admiral allowed himself to smile. They had done something no other species had ever done. They had said no. Whatever came next, that could never be taken away. The council chamber was the largest room Ambassador had ever seen. It stretched upward for hundreds of meters, filled with floating platforms where representatives from 47 species watched and waited. Light came from nowhere and everywhere. The air smelled strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. Walked calmly across the central platform. She was 63 years old. Her hair had turned silver years ago. Her face carried the lines of a difficult life. She had survived 3 colonial wars, 2 assassination attempts, and a marriage that ended badly. A room full of aliens did not frighten her. Behind her walked Commander, representing Earth's military. He was younger than, but his eyes were old. He had seen combat. He knew what violence looked like up close. Beside him was Song, their legal expert. She carried a data tablet and wore a small smile that made several alien delegates nervous. High Arbiter descended from his platform on a beam of light. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and too many arms. His tentacles moved constantly, expressing emotions that humans could not read. "Ambassador," said. His voice was translated through devices embedded in the walls. "We have received your response. We assume there has been a misunderstanding." "There has been no misunderstanding," replied. Her voice was steady. "We reject your terms, all of them." The chamber erupted. Dozens of species began speaking at once. Translator devices struggled to keep up, heard fragments in 100 languages. Impossible, unacceptable, madness. Raised his tentacles for silence. It took several minutes for the noise to die down. "You cannot simply refuse," he said. "The integration protocols exist for a reason. They maintain galactic stability. They protect young species from their own mistakes. They ensure peace." "Whose peace?" asked. "Yours, because I have seen the records. I have seen what happens to species under your protection." She gestured to, who stepped forward with her tablet. "The people," began. "Population 6,000 years ago, 12 billion. Population today, 4 billion. A decline of 60%. Your population controls have slowly strangled them." A ripple of movement came from the section of the chamber. Their representative, an elderly female named, sat very still. "The Dominion," continued. Once known as the greatest warriors in the galaxy, they surrendered their fleet under your integration protocols. Within 3 centuries, your council had them mining asteroids like slaves. Their warrior traditions are now illegal. More movement, more whispers. The collective. They created music so beautiful that other species would travel across the galaxy just to hear it. Your council banned their traditional instruments as culturally destabilizing. Their concert halls are museums now. Their songs are forgotten. Lowered her tablet. I could continue. I have 44 more examples. Each one tells the same story. Species join your council as equals. Within a few centuries, they are servants. Within a few more, they are shadows of what they once were. Tentacles had gone very still. These are acceptable losses. The galaxy requires order. Individual cultures must sometimes sacrifice for the greater good. Laughed. It was a sharp sound like breaking glass. Several delegates flinched. Acceptable to whom? He asked. Not to the. You never asked them if their deaths were acceptable. You just decided for them. This is how things are done, insisted. This is how they have always been done. For 12,000 years, the Council has maintained peace. No species has complained. No species was allowed to complain, said quietly. You controlled their media. You controlled their education. You controlled their population. How could they complain when you shaped every thought in their heads? The chamber had gone completely silent. Representatives stared at the human delegation with expressions that ranged from horror to fascination to something that might have been hope. We are offering you something better, tried again. Protection, trade, a place in galactic society. You are young and foolish. You do not understand the dangers that exist beyond your small corner of space. We understand danger very well, replied. Humans have been killing each other for 200,000 years. We invented nuclear weapons and pointed them at ourselves. We nearly destroyed our own planet through greed and stupidity. We know exactly what danger looks like. She stepped closer too. Despite being much smaller, she did not seem afraid. And we learned something from all that suffering. We learned that safety purchased with slavery is not worth having. We learned that a cage is still a cage, even if it is made of gold. We learned that sometimes the only choice that matters is the choice to say no. Studied her for a long moment. You would risk war against the combined might of 47 species. Yes. You would risk the destruction of your entire civilization. Yes. Why? The question seemed genuine, confused, lost. Why would you choose death over integration? Thought about her grandmother who had survived a terrible war. She thought about her father who had built schools in refugee camps. She thought about her daughter who was pregnant with his first grandchild. Because we would rather die as ourselves than live as something you made us become, she said. Because our freedom is worth more than our survival. Because humans have always been too stubborn to know when to quit. She turned to address the entire chamber. 47 species watched her, this small woman from a young world who dared to challenge everything they knew. We did not come here to surrender, announced. We came here to negotiate, real negotiation, where both sides give something and both sides get something, where agreements are made between equals, not forced upon the weak by the strong. We do not negotiate, said. We have never negotiated. The terms are the terms. Then learn, smiled, and there was steel in it. We will be happy to teach you. She turned and walked toward the exit, and followed. None of them looked back. Behind them, the chamber remained silent for a long time. Representatives looked at each other, at the empty platform where the humans had stood, at the high arbiter who seemed frozen in place. Avda was the first to speak. Her voice was old and thin, but it carried through the chamber like a bell. In 6,000 years, she said, no one has ever spoken to us like that. No one has ever asked what we wanted. No one has ever said that we deserved better. She paused, her ancient eyes bright with something that might have been tears. "I think I like these humans." The Council sent 40 warships to Earth's solar system. They called it a diplomatic mission. Everyone knew it was a threat. Admiral Park watched them arrive on his tactical display. 40 vessels from 12 different species. Some were sleek and silver. Others were dark and angular. A few looked like living things, with hulls that seemed to breathe. All of them carried enough weapons to burn cities. "They are taking position near Jupiter," Lieutenant reported. "Standard attack formation. They are broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies." Nodded slowly. He stood on the bridge of the unconquered Earth's battleship. Around him, 27 human vessels waited in formation. They were smaller than the Council ships, fewer in number, less advanced in every way that could be measured. But they were crewed by humans, and that made all the difference. "Open a channel to their fleet commander," ordered. A moment later, an alien face appeared on screen. Fleet Admiral was, with compound eyes and mandibles that clicked when he spoke. He had commanded 6 pacification campaigns. He had never lost. "Human Admiral," said. His translator made his voice sound flat and cold. "You have 1 hour to surrender your vessels and submit to integration protocols. Resistance will result in your complete destruction." "I have a different idea," replied calmly. "Withdraw your fleet now and we will not destroy you." His mandibles clicked rapidly. It might have been laughter. "You have 27 ships, I have 40. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your species has been traveling between stars for less than 50 years. You cannot possibly win." "Perhaps," leaned back in his chair, "but you have never fought humans before. You do not know what we are capable of." "I know mathematics. I know physics. I know that superior numbers and superior weapons always win." "Then you have learned the wrong lessons," smiled. It was not a friendly expression. "Let me teach you some new ones." He closed the channel and turned to his crew. "All ships, battle stations. Execute pattern Sigma 7 on my mark." The next 63 minutes changed galactic history. Human ships did not fight like other species. They did not form neat lines. They did not exchange fire at safe distances. They did not retreat when damaged. Instead, they attacked. The unconquered led the charge, driving straight into the center of the Council formation. Tactical computers predicted the move and calculated that the human flagship would be destroyed in seconds. The computers were wrong. Pilots executed maneuvers that should have been impossible. They flew between enemy ships so close that their hulls nearly touched. They fired weapons at angles that made no tactical sense until the shots bounced off asteroids and hit targets from behind. They used their own damaged vessels as shields, as weapons, as distractions. "How are they doing this?" demanded. His officers had no answer. Their training had not prepared them for enemies who fought like this. Their computers could not predict behavior that seemed completely insane. The Hammer of Earth, a small destroyer commanded by Captain, lost its main weapons in the opening minutes. Instead of retreating, accelerated directly toward a Council cruiser 10 times his size. At the last moment, his crew ejected their reactor core and jumped to safety. The resulting explosion tore the cruiser in half. The Spirit of Soul took heavy damage protecting a civilian transport that had wandered into the battle zone. Commander Jin refused to abandon her post. She kept her ship fighting until every civilian was safe, then rammed an enemy frigate that was trying to flank the human formation. She survived, barely. And through it all, commanded from the center of the chaos. He did not hide behind his fleet. He did not give orders from safety. He fought alongside his people, his ship taking hit after hit while continuing to deal damage. "Admiral," reported, her voice tight with pain. She had been wounded by shrapnel but refused to leave her station. "Enemy fleet is breaking formation. They are trying to retreat." "Do not let them," ordered. "Pursue and engage, but—" He paused. Do not destroy ships that are trying to surrender, disable them only. We are not murderers. The battle ended 54 minutes later. 11 Council ships drifted dead in space. 23 more were damaged beyond combat capability. The remaining 6 fled toward the outer system, their weapons silent, their crews in shock. The human fleet had lost 4 ships. 97 crew members were dead. 300 more were wounded. It was a terrible cost. But they had won. Opened a broadcast channel. His image appeared on screens across the Council fleet, across the solar system, across relay stations that would carry his words to 100 worlds. This is Admiral Park of the United Earth Defense Fleet. Your diplomatic mission has failed. Your ships are defeated. Your warriors have learned what humans can do when we choose to fight. He let the words sink in before continuing. We did not want this battle. We did not seek war. We asked only to be treated as equals. You responded with threats and violence, so we answered in the only language you understand. Behind him, the burning wreckage of a Council cruiser drifted past the viewport. Go back to your Council. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that 27 human ships held against 40 of theirs. Tell them that we asked for nothing but respect and were willing to die for it. He paused. And tell them that we are ready to negotiate. Real negotiation, between equals. We will be waiting. The channel closed. Silence fell across the bridge of the unconquered. Spoke first. Do you think they will listen, Admiral? Watched the Council ships limp away toward the stars. He thought about the 97 men and women who had died today. He thought about the families who would receive terrible news. He thought about the price of freedom. They will listen, he said quietly, because now they know something they did not know before. What is that, sir? Turned away from the viewport. His face was tired, sad, but beneath it all proud. They know that humans do not bluff. When we say no, we mean it. When we fight to win. And when we offer our hand in friendship, he almost smiled. That is worth more than all the fear in the galaxy. He walked off the bridge to visit the wounded in medical. Behind him, his crew began the long work of repair, recovery, and preparation. The war was not over, but the first battle was won, and sometimes that made all the difference. Ambassador returned to the Council station 3 weeks after the battle. She came alone this time, without military escort, without guards. Just one small woman walking through corridors designed for giants. The Council expected demands. They expected anger. They expected humans to act like conquerors, the way every powerful species had always acted. Instead, asked to meet with the received her in a small room overlooking the station's garden district. The elderly moved slowly, her joints stiff with age, her eyes clouded but still sharp. She had lived for over 400 years. She remembered a time before the Council's quotas, before the population controls, before her people began to fade. Why did you ask for me? Asked. I have no power, I speak for a dying race. The Council barely notices us anymore. That is exactly why I wanted to speak with you. Sat across from her, 2 old women from different worlds sharing tea that neither particularly liked. Tell me about your people. Tell me what they were before the Council. Was quiet for a long moment, then she began to speak. She talked about cities that floated in the clouds of her. She talked about festivals that lasted for weeks, where millions would gather to celebrate life and love and the simple joy of existence. She talked about scientists who had unlocked secrets of the universe, artists who had created wonders, philosophers who had asked questions that still had no answers. We were dreamers, said finally. We believed that anything was possible, that the universe was full of miracles waiting to be discovered. What happened? The Council happened. His voice carried no anger, only sadness. They told us we were too many, too ambitious, too dangerous to ourselves. They offered protection. They offered stability. They offered peace. And you accepted. We had no choice. Their fleet was vast. Their technology was far beyond ours, and they seemed so reasonable, so concerned for our welfare, made a sound that might have been a laugh. By the time we understood the truth, it was too late. Our population was already declining. Our culture was already fading. We had forgotten how to dream. Reached across the table and took's hand. The skin was cool and dry, like paper. "What if you could dream again?" asked softly. "What if there was another way?" Over the next several weeks, met with representatives from dozens of species. She spoke with the whose warrior traditions had been suppressed for centuries. She spoke with the whose music halls stood empty and silent. She spoke with species whose names humans could not pronounce, whose histories had been erased, whose futures had been stolen. To each of them, she said the same thing. "You do not have to live like this." She did not promise them weapons. She did not promise them war. She did not promise them that humans would save them. Instead, she promised them something more dangerous. She promised them a choice. Song worked through the nights, building something that had never existed before. A legal framework for voluntary association. Trade agreements that benefited both parties equally. Defense pacts based on mutual protection, not domination. A system where species could join together because they wanted to, not because they were forced to. "This is madness," one council observer told her. "You cannot build a galactic civilization on voluntary cooperation. Someone must be in charge. Someone must enforce the rules." "Why?" asked simply. The observer had no answer. Word spread quietly through the station. Representatives began talking to each other in private, not through official council channels but directly. Species that had not spoken in centuries found themselves sharing meals, sharing stories, sharing dreams they had thought long dead. The ambassador, a warrior named, sought out one evening. "My grandfather told me stories," he said. His voice was rough, like stones grinding together. "Stories of a time when warriors defended the weak, protected the innocent, fought for honor instead of profit. I thought they were just legends, children's tales." "What do you think now?" Looked at his hands. They were large and powerful, built for fighting. But they had spent centuries doing nothing but mining rocks for the council's profit. "I think my grandfather would be ashamed of what we have become. I think he would want us to remember who we were." "Then remember," said, "and help us build something better." High Arbiter summoned for an emergency meeting. His tentacles moved with agitation as she entered his chambers. "You are destabilizing the galactic order," he accused. "You are spreading dangerous ideas. You are turning species against the council." "I am talking to people," replied calmly. "I am listening to their stories. I am asking what they want. That is all." "That is more than enough," voice rose. "For 12,000 years the Council has maintained peace. We have prevented wars. We have stopped species from destroying themselves. We have created stability." "You have created a prison," said. "A beautiful, comfortable prison where the inmates have forgotten they are prisoners, where the chains are invisible but no less real, where freedom has become just a word in old stories." "Freedom leads to chaos. We have seen it. Young species tear themselves apart when left to their own choices." "Some do," admitted. "Humans almost did many times, but we learned. We grew. We became better not because someone forced us, but because we chose to. That is what you have taken from these species. Not just their resources, not just their populations. You have taken their right to fail, and in doing so, you have taken their ability to grow." Stared at her. "You are very certain of yourself for a representative of such a young species." "I am certain of one thing," met his gaze without flinching. "The universe is not safe. It will never be safe. All we can do is choose how we face the danger, together as equals, making our own mistakes and learning from them, or alone in cages you built, waiting to fade away." She stood to leave. "The choice is not mine to make," she said. "It never was. It belongs to the 47 species you have controlled for so long. All I did was remind them that they still have the right to choose." She walked out of the chamber. Behind her stood motionless, his tentacles frozen in something that might have been fear. Because he could hear them now, whispers in the corridors, conversations in the gardens, questions being asked that had not been asked in. What do we want? What could we become? What if we said no? The fracture had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. 6 months had passed since humanity first said no. The great chamber of the Galactic Council was full for the first time in 4,000 years. Every species had sent representatives. Every voice would be heard. Today, the galaxy would decide its future. Ambassador sat in the human section, a small island of Earth in a sea of alien faces. Beside her, Song clutched her data tablet like a shield. Commander watched the crowd with careful eyes, his hand never far from the weapon he was not supposed to have. High Arbiter called the chamber to order. His voice was tired. He had aged visibly in the past months. The certainty that had defined his leadership was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like doubt. "We are here to vote on the following motion," he announced. "The abolition of mandatory integration protocols, the end of required tribute payments, the dissolution of population controls, the removal of council overseers from member worlds." He paused, his tentacles hanging limp at his sides. In short, the end of everything the council has stood for since its founding. The founding species spoke first. The hegemony, the collective, the ascendancy. 3 ancient civilizations that had built the council and profited from it for 12,000 years. Their arguments were familiar: stability, security, the dangers of chaos, the foolishness of youth. Without the council's guidance, these species will tear themselves apart, the hegemony representative warned. They need us. They have always needed us. Then the other species began to speak. Of the rose slowly. Her ancient body trembled with the effort, but her voice was strong. "I have lived for 400 years, she said. "In all that time I have watched my people fade. Our cities grow empty. Our children grow fewer. Our dreams grow small. You told us this was necessary. You told us this was protection. You told us we were fortunate." She looked around the chamber at faces she had known for centuries. "I believed you. We all believed you, because we had forgotten what it felt like to hope for something better." She turned to look at the human delegation. Then they came, these strange, young, impossible people. They looked at your terms and said no. They faced your fleet and did not run. They asked us what we wanted, and for the first time in 6,000 years, we remembered that we were allowed to want things. Straighten, standing taller than she had in decades. "I do not know if we can rebuild what we have lost. Perhaps it is too late for but I would rather spend my remaining years trying than spend them fatting in comfortable silence. I vote yes." Of the spoke next. His face showed no emotion, but his hands were clenched into fists. "My people were warriors once. We protected the weak. We stood against injustice. We lived by a code of honor that defined who we were. The council took that from us. They called our traditions dangerous and our strength unnecessary." He looked at with something like pity. "You made us miners, laborers, servants. You told us we were keeping the peace, but we were just keeping your profits. No more. Remember who we are. We vote yes." One by one, the species spoke. They who had begun composing music again in secret. They whose philosophers had started asking forbidden questions. They whose children had begun dreaming of stars instead of quotas. 44 species voted yes. 3 voted no. Stared at the results for a long moment. Then, slowly, he removed the chain of office from around his neck. "The motion passes," he said quietly. "The integration protocols are abolished. The mandatory tribute is ended. The population controls are lifted. Council overseers will be recalled from all worlds." He set the chain down on his podium. "I have served this council for 300 years. I believed in what we were doing. I believed we were protecting the galaxy from itself." He looked at, and for the first time she saw something human in his alien eyes. "I was wrong." He stepped down from his position. Nobody moved to stop him. In the months that followed, the galaxy transformed. The Council was replaced by the Alliance, a new organization built on the principles had drafted: voluntary membership, mutual defense, equal trade. No species was forced to join, but one by one they did anyway, not because they were afraid, but because they wanted to be part of something better. Admiral Park retired to a small house on Earth's Pacific coast. He spent his days fishing and watching the waves. Sometimes reporters would find him and ask how it felt to have changed the galaxy. He would laugh and shake his head. "We did not change anything. We just said no, and then we proved we meant it. Everything else was their choice." On the newly renamed Alliance Station, watched the first truly voluntary trade agreement being signed. A merchant ship docked beside a human freighter, their crews shaking hands and tentacles in greeting. Two species who had never spoken directly were now partners. Approached her, moving more easily than she had in years. The hope in her eyes had taken years off her ancient face. "I must ask you something," said. "Your species is so young. Your ships were so few. What made you believe you could defy an empire that had ruled for 12,000 years?" Thought about the question. She thought about her grandmother who had survived impossible odds. She thought about her father who had built hope from nothing. She thought about her daughter who had given birth last month to a healthy baby girl. "We did not think we would win," she admitted. "We just knew we could not accept slavery, so we chose to fight instead, whatever the cost." Was quiet for a long moment, then she reached out and took his hand. "That is very human," she said. Smiled, "Thank you." 3 years later, the Alliance sent its first joint exploration fleet into unknown space. 12 species flew together, their ships moving in formation through the darkness, not as conquerors, not as subjects, as equals. Commander stood on the bridge of the flagship New Dawn. She had come a long way from the lieutenant who had reported battle damage while bleeding from shrapnel wounds. Now, she led the most diverse crew in galactic history. She opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, this is New Dawn. We are entering unknown territory. Stay alert, stay together, and remember what brought us here." She paused, thinking of all the people who had made this moment possible, who had first said no, who had shown them a better way, and in all the others who had found the courage to choose. We negotiate fair, or we do not negotiate at all. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving trails of light against the stars. Behind them, the Alliance continued to grow, species after species joining because they wanted to, because they believed in something, because they had remembered how to dream. And somewhere on a small blue planet, a retired admiral watched the sunset and smiled. The galaxy had changed, not because humanity had conquered it, but because humanity had reminded it of something it had forgotten. That hope was stronger than fear. That choice was stronger than control. That sometimes, the most powerful word in any language was a simple one. No. And then, when the time was right, an even more powerful word. Yes.